Unlike most times, when I start by browsing award-winning websites for inspiration, the idea for today's video came together while I was building this month's website template for Pro members. While working on the layout, I wanted to add an interactive element to the landing page, something that felt modern while staying true to a clean, minimal aesthetic. I spent some time exploring Shader Toy to find a subtle, slightly futuristic effect that could work, but nothing quite matched the look I was aiming for. So I decided to make the logo itself the focal point. Instead of simply placing a static image, I wanted something interactive. That's when I built this really high quality fluid particle distortion designed to mimic the shape of the logo. As you move your cursor around, it creates this sleek CRT style gradient with a fluid particle distortion animation. It gives the logo a sense of motion and depth while adding just the right amount of visual interest. I felt it could be a fun, reusable element that others could incorporate on their own sites to add an extra branding interactive touch. And to make that easier, I made everything fully configurable. You can replace the logo by simply swapping in a new PNG, change the colors of the particles in canvas, adjust the size, and customize the animation behavior like the distortion radius, displacement strength, etc. I've also created a Next.js version of the component that you can drop directly into your project. Just update the config, replace the logo, and you are all set. If you find my work helpful, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. And if you'd like to access the source code for this project, along with hundreds of other similar micro projects and a complete new full website template every month, you can check out the Pro membership via the link in the description. Alright, let's get into it. For the HTML, we don't need anything except a canvas element which will be used to render and animate the particles. Since we don't need any layout or styling, instead of creating a separate CSS file, I have just added a style tag inside the head section with a simple global reset. This reset removes default margin and padding and sets box sizing to border box for consistency across elements. Next, I've got a file called shaders.js. This is where we'll keep the shaders that WebGL will use to draw our particles. If you have never worked with the shaders before, they are just small programs that run on the GPU and they are essential whenever we are doing low-level rendering like this. In WebGL, we mostly need two shaders, a vertex shader and a fragment shader. The vertex shader is in charge of calculating where each point should appear on the screen. The fragment shader defines what the point actually looks like its color, transparency, and edges. So instead of using something like CSS or HTML to style the particles, we are writing tiny GPU programs that give us much more control and performance. This approach also makes it possible to draw thousands of particles with smooth animations without slowing down the browser. Since I don't have much experience writing shaders myself, I asked Claude to write it for me and put together two simple shaders for this project. The goal here is to keep things minimal, easy to understand, and tailored specifically for this particle effect. So first, as you can see, I've got the vertex shader. This one is responsible for positioning each particle on the screen. It takes particle's original position and converts it into clip space, which is the coordinate system WebGL uses to draw things. I am also making sure it receives the canvas resolution so it can scale and position particles correctly across different screen sizes. And I am passing the color data for each particle so we can access that later in the fragment shader. Lastly, I am setting a fixed point size so that all the particles are drawn consistently no matter what their position is. Now, moving on to the fragment shader, this one controls how each individual pixel inside a particle looks. Instead of drawing plain, square dots, it's a simple radial fall off, so each particle fades out softly at the edges. This gives the whole effect a much more organic and fluid look. I am also making sure that any particles that are nearly transparent don't get rendered at all, which helps keep the visuals clean and sharp. So that's the basic shader setup, just two small functions, one to place the particles on the screen and one to handle their appearance. It's simple, efficient, and gets the exact look I was going for. Now that both shaders are ready, let's go to our script file and start setting up the WebGL context so we can plug these shaders in and get the particle system running. The first thing we do is import the shaders we just saw. The single line pulls in the vertex and fragment shader strings so we can send them to WebGL later. Next, I'm setting up a config object. Keeping these values in one place lets us tweak the effect without digging through the whole file. Logo path tells the script where to find the PNG we want to transform it into particles. Logo size defines how much pixels of that image we sample. Larger values gives us more particles and more detail. Logo color lets us tint the logo so it blends with the different color palettes. Canvas background sets the background color behind the particles. Distortion radius controls how far the mouse can reach to push particles around. Force strength decides how hard each particle is nudged when the cursor passes by. Max displacement limits how far any particle can stray from its original logo position so the shape never melts completely. Return force is the spring strength that pulls everything back into place after the disturbance. With the config sorted, I am declaring a few variables we'll need throughout the script. Canvas will reference the canvas element we put in the HTML. GL will hold the WebGL context, which is the gateway to GPU rendering. Program will store the compiled shader program once we link the vertex and fragment shaders together. Particles is a plain JavaScript array where we'll keep per particle data such as position and velocity, things we update on the CPU side each frame. Position array and color array are typed arrays. They'll mirror the particle positions and colors but in a format that can be sent straight to the GPU. Position buffer and color buffer reference the actual GPU buffers. Once we fill the typed arrays, we upload them into these buffers so the shaders can read the data every frame. Mouse is a simple object that tracks the cursor's X and Y positions in device pixels. We'll update it on every mouse move event so the particles know where the distortion center is. Finally, animation count is a little timer that keeps the effect alive for a short burst whenever the mouse moves. As long as that value stays above 0, we'll keep pushing particles around, otherwise everything gently settles back into the original logo. With these fundamentals in place, we can start writing the helper functions that prepare the canvas, set up the WebGL, load the logo image, and turn its pixels into particles. Now that we have declared all our main variables, I'm going to start setting up the canvas and WebGL context. First, I've created a function called setUpCanvas. Here I'm grabbing the canvas element from the DOM and setting its size based on the current screen dimensions. I'm also taking the device's pixel ratio into account, so on high resolution displays like Retina screens, the canvas still looks sharp. The actual width and height are multiplied by the device pixel ratio, but I'm also setting the CSS width and height back to regular pixel values, so it scales properly on screen without stretching. Next, I'm creating a function called setUpWebGL. This is where I'll get the WebGL context from the canvas and configure a few options. I'm setting alpha to true so we can have transparent pixels, disabling depth and stencil buffers since we don't need them for this 2D effect, and enabling anti-aliasing to smooth out the particles. I'm also telling the browser to prioritize performance over visual quality, which helps when rendering thousands of particles in real time. Then, I'm enabling blending. This lets semi-transparent pixels fade nicely into the background. And finally, I'm setting the blend function so the alpha channel works properly with our soft particle edges. Now that canvas and WebGL context are ready, I'll move on to setting up the shaders. Inside the setUpShaders function, I'm compiling both the vertex and fragment shaders. I'm doing that with a helper function called compileShader, which takes the shader type and its source code, compiles it, and returns the result. Once both shaders are compiled, I create a WebGL program, attach both shaders to it, and link them together. This gives us a complete shader program that we'll use later during rendering. So at this point, we have a fully configured canvas, an optimized WebGL context, and a ready-to-go shader program. Next, we load the logo image and start generating the particle data based on it. Now it's time to load the logo image and start converting it into particles. To do that, I've created a function called loadLogo. Inside this function, I'm creating a new image object. This will allow us to load the logo file we specified in the config. When the image finishes loading, I'm drawing it onto a temporary canvas. The reason we do this is because in JavaScript, you can't directly read pixel data from an image, but once we draw it on a canvas, we can grab the raw pixel data using getImageData. Before drawing, I'm applying a scale so the image is slightly smaller than the canvas size, and I'm calculating a bit of offset so the image stays centered. This gives us cleaner edges and better positioning. Once the image is drawn, I call getImageData, which returns an array of pixel values in RGBA format. This means every 4 values in that array represent 1 pixel: red, green, blue, and alpha. Then I pass the pixel data into a function called createParticles, which is where all the particle magic happens. Inside createParticles, the first thing I do is figure out the center of the canvas. That's where we want the logo to appear, right in the middle of the screen. Then I create 2 arrays, one for the particle positions and one for their colors. We'll use these to build the data we eventually send to the GPU. I also define a helper function here to convert the logo color from hex to RGB, so we can use it to tint the original logo image. Next, I loop through every pixel in the image. For each pixel, I check the alpha value. This tells us how transparent the pixel is. If the alpha is greater than 10, that means the pixel is visible enough to become a particle. So we calculate the X and Y position of that pixel relative to the center of the screen. These values are pushed into the positions array. Then I extract the original red, green, blue and alpha values from the pixel. To apply a consistent color tint, I multiply those values by the tint we got earlier from the config. This gives us a colored version of the original image based on our branding or theme. The result is pushed into the colors array for each of these pixels that pass the alpha check. I also push a particle object into the particles array. This object stores the original x and y position of that particle as well as its velocity, which we'll use later to animate the particles. Once all the particles are created, I convert the positions and colors array into float32 arrays. These are typed arrays which are required by WebGL to upload data to the GPU. After that, I call a function called createBuffers which uploads all this data to GPU buffers so the shaders can use it. And finally, I start the animation loop by calling animate. From this point onward, the particle system is alive. So just to recap, we load the image, grab all the visible pixels, turn each one into a particle, color it and store it in memory, and prepare everything to be drawn on the canvas in real time. This is the core of how the logo gets translated into a living, moving particle system. In the next part, we'll set up the buffers and begin rendering the particles on the screen. To do that, I've created a function called createBuffers. This is where we'll initialize and fill the WebGL buffers for both particle positions and colors. First, I'm creating a buffer for the positions, then I bind it as an array buffer, which is the buffer type used for the vertex data. And finally, I upload the position array to the GPU using buffer data. Since this data will be updated every frame as particles move, I'm using the dynamic draw flag to tell WebGL that it's going to change often. Next, I do the same for the color data, but in this case, the colors won't change after initialization, so I use static draw to signal that the data can stay as is. With both buffers in place, WebGL now has all the data it needs to start the drawing particles. Now, I'm moving on to the animation logic. I've created an animate function which acts as our main loop. This will run on every frame using request animation frame, and it simply calls two functions, one to update the particles physics and another to render them on the screen. Let's start with update physics function. This function is responsible for all the motion and interaction. First, I check if the animation should be still active. I am using a countdown timer called animation count, which lets us only update things when the mouse has moved recently. If the count is greater than 0, we update the particles, otherwise everything stays still to save performance. Next, I calculate the radius of influence around the mouse. We'll only apply force to particles that fall within the circular area. Then I loop through each particle and grab its current position. I calculate the distance between the particle and the mouse position. If the particle is close enough, I compute a force based on that distance. So, the closer it is, the stronger the push. I also calculate the angle from the particle to the mouse so we know which direction to apply the force. To make the distortion feel organic, I adjust the strength of the push based on how far the particle has already moved from its original spot. This way, the farther it's been dragged, the weaker the force becomes, which helps maintain the overall shape of the logo. Once the force is calculated, I update the particle's velocity. Then I apply a bit of damping to the velocity to make sure things slow down over time. After that, I calculate a target position. This is where the particle should move next, based on its current velocity and a spring force pulling it back toward its original location. Now, to make sure particles don't fly too far away, I check if the distance from the original logo position exceeds our max displacement. If it does, I gently clamp it back by scaling the motion down. I also reduce the velocity slightly to keep things from snapping or bouncing too hard. Otherwise, if it's within bounds, I update the particle position normally. Once all the particles are updated, I send the latest position data back to the GPU using buffer subdata. This replaces the old data inside the position buffer with our new updated values. This whole system gives us a natural fluid interaction where particles respond to the cursor and then slowly drift back to their original places while still respecting boundaries and preserving the logo shape. Next, we'll handle the actual rendering where we draw the updated particles to the canvas using WebGL. Now that the physics is updating every frame, the last step is to actually draw the particles on the canvas. For that, I have created a render function. This is where we'll prepare the WebGL scene, set the background color, and feed in the updated particle data. First, I'm setting up the viewport. This tells WebGL what area of the canvas we want to draw on, in this case, the full width and height of the canvas. Then I'm clearing the canvas using the background color we defined earlier in the config. I am using a helper here to convert the hex color into RGB format, since WebGL needs the values in a normalized decimal from between 0 and 1. After clearing the screen, I check if there are any particles to draw. If there aren't, I simply return early to avoid any errors or unnecessary rendering. Next, I activate the shader program we linked earlier. This connects our JavaScript logic with the shaders we wrote in the shaders.js file. Now I need to send the current canvas resolution to the shader, so I grab the location of resolution uniform and pass in the canvas width and height. This allows the vertex shader to properly map each particle's position to screen space. Then I bind the position buffer. This contains the current x and y values for every particle. I enable the corresponding attribute in the shader and tell WebGL how to read the data, 2 floats per particle, tightly packed with no gaps. After that, I bind the color buffer. This has the RGBA values for each particle. Again, I enable the matching shader attribute and tell WebGL how to interpret the data, 4 floats per particle in this case. And finally, I call the draw function. Here I'm asking WebGL to draw all the particles as points. Each one will be rendered using the logic we defined in the vertex and fragment shaders. This happens every single frame, which means as the particle positions update in memory, they are re-rendered right away on the screen, creating that smooth dynamic fluid effect in real time. And that's our render function done. The loop is now fully alive. The mouse moves, physics updates, and the particles redraw continuously to reflect those changes. Next, we'll add event listener so the animation actually responds to the user's cursor. Now I'm adding a function called setupEvents. This will handle user interactions and also keep the canvas responsive on window resize. First, I'm adding a mouse move event listener. Every time the user moves their mouse, I calculate the cursor's position relative to the canvas. To get accurate values, especially on high density screens, I also multiply the mouse coordinates by the device's pixel ratio. Then I store those updated values in the mouse object, which the physics system uses to figure out which particles to push around. I also reset animation count to 300 each time the mouse moves. This basically keeps the animation loop alive for a short duration, so even after you stop moving the mouse, the particles continue to ripple and ease back into place. If you don't touch the mouse for a while, the animation naturally fades out. Next, I'm adding a resize event. Whenever the window size changes, I call setupCanvas again to update the canvas resolution, but that's not enough on its own. We also need to reposition the particles so the logo stays centered. So I check if the particle array has already been created. If it has, I recalculate the new center of the screen and then loop through all the particles to update their original positions based on the new canvas size. I use a simple row column grid logic to reposition the particles proportionally across the new space. This way, even if the window gets resized, the logo shape stays clean, centered, and accurate. Finally, I update the position buffer with this new data so everything renders correctly again on the new layout. With event listeners in place, we can now handle user interaction and dynamic resizing. To tie everything together, I've created an init function. This is our main entry point. I am calling all the setup functions here in the right order. We set up the canvas, initialize WebGL, compile and link the shaders, load the logo image, and finally attach all the event listeners. Then at the very bottom, I call an init function to kick things off. And with that, the particle logo animation is fully up and running, interactive, responsive, and completely dynamic. Now I know this code might seem like a lot, and I won't lie, since I'm not a really WebGL person, getting all the pieces to work together was definitely tricky. I had to rely on Claude quite a bit to help me structure and debug the shaders and WebGL setup, so if some parts feel overwhelming, that's totally normal. This stuff can get pretty low level. I've tried my best to break down everything step by step and explain what's going on, but if you are stuck at any point and have questions, feel free to reach out. Hope you found the video helpful. See you in the next one.